r/ask Reddit. What was the creepiest thing someone said on the first date? I love Asian girls. They remind me of children. That isn't a red flag. That's a red banner. It's not a red flag. It's a red light, then a blue light, then red again, then blue, and a loud wee woo noise. Mid-date he placed his hand on my stomach and said my son will grow hair. Called their mom in front of me to say they met a real winner and how they were done with their ex. Not sure if this counts, but it was really uncomfortable. That happened on a first date? Bro, that sounds incredibly awkward. Yay. Never called the guy again because I was so weirded out. I told this guy I played the piano, and like half an hour later he said, if I wanted you to always remember me, I'd break your ring fingers, you know, cause they don't heal well and then you'd always think of me when playing. Suffice to say, I left the restaurant fairly quickly. Good god, what a horrific thought to have, and then to decide it was a good idea to vocalize that. I hope you never had the misfortune of seeing him again. Friend told me the guy not only asked for a selfie but posted on Facebook with the caption "My queen. First time meeting." He wanted to go for a walk at the park with me at 4 AM. So when I said no he said, "Don't worry, I won't rape you," and gave me a twisted smile. I'm just gonna assume the second date was not granted. Nope. He creeped me out so badly I made up a lie that I got back with my ex who doesn't like me talking to other men, and then I blocked him on everything social media possible, lol. I invited my ex to join us for lunch. He was in the military, Canadian. I asked him if he ever did any volunteer work overseas with the military and he said, no, I joined the military to kill people, not to help people. Chugged my beer and got out of there as fast as I could. That sounds like the kind of guy who would get a dishonorable discharge as soon as he left boot camp, and then would brag how he's a veteran flashing his obviously fake medals. Sounds like the kinda guy that talks himself up then fakes an injury during boot camp so he can keep all the benefits and not have to do shit. I want you to carve your initials on my thigh with a knife. She was very serious. Well, how else are you supposed to carve your initials on her thigh? Ballpoint pen in time. He told me he could rape me if he wanted. He wasn't joking. Look, this has to go well. Both of my brother's wives are pregnant with their second children. Do not let me down. Said to me within 3 minutes of sitting down. Could it have been a joke? The words read like a joke, but I guess it's all in the delivery. I thought it was a joke at first and tried to awkwardly laugh it off, but the tone of his voice was something I'd never heard before. He also didn't blink much and he had the most intense, intimidating stare, like he was trying to make me break down and confess my darkest secrets right there at the table. Some other things were said, mainly pertaining to his occupation, that made the hairs on the back of my neck stand up. Looking back now, I feel like there's a 99% chance he was doing abusive, illegal shit at his job, and whatever he was doing would have impacted a ton of people for life. Went out with a girl one night and after dinner she drove me up into the mountains. I was new to the area, and after a while, when there were no more lights, she started talking about serial killers. I still remember her saying I used to think about getting away with stuff like that sometimes. Dude, same happened to me. We went to eat then took a walk at the reservoir and she started talking about serial killers and how it would be a good spot for a body, then proceeded to talk about this movie where there was a killer ghost STD or something. Haha. Went to school with her and asked her out on a date. She's not crazy or anything, but I'm not into that and it was a first date. Can I cut you and drink it? She was serious. No, not before the third date. This is a nice place. I've seen you eating here before. This can be fairly casual to super creepy entirely depending on tone and context though. It was their kitchen. I just really like mustard as she continues. Suck mustard packets. Worst part. We were at a somewhat nice restaurant. She brought mustard to eat. Must remember to pack mustard in case of a bad date. Purse-sized escape plan with minimal chance of stalking. Not what he said but what he did. He ducking stole my keys while I was out of the room and took off into the night. We had an hours-long standoff where he wouldn't answer my calls or texts begging him to return them. I stood by his truck that was parked a few blocks away making sure that he didn't leave with them. Eventually he dropped them off in my car and I got a ride home from the cops. Honestly, one of the scariest episodes of my life. My son is gonna love having you around. Lady, we talked twice on Tinder and I've only known you for 5 minutes. Ease up on the stepdaddy talk. Full disclosure. Not long after I met a nice woman with 3 children. I adopted all 3 not long after we married. I met her on Tinder. I think that means the first lady was correct. This guy wasn't talking at all and I only brought a few talking points cause normally they talk the whole time. I didn't have anything else to say and asked him to start talking and he said, "What I want to talk about can't be said in public." When I ended the date he thought we were going to go to my place to talk and I said no. I got in my car, noted what car he got into, and took a few breaths to calm down. I looked around and his car was still there. I waited 30 minutes before he left the parking lot and stayed another 15 before I left. You never know. Maybe he was gonna tell you about his superhero alter egos, but seriously that is a red banner and whoever he is, I'm glad you dodged that bullet. Went on a Tinder date to the movies when I was 18. He picked me up in his truck and played terrible loud depressing music in the theater. He was on his phone swiping on Tinder the whole time. Then leaned over and told me that I was lucky to be out with him because all these other girls wanted to be with him. Yikes, my roommate picked me up when I excused myself to the bathroom. So glad you escaped, weirdo. We would have cute babies or my personal favorite for Halloween we could go as a slave and master, haha. Get it? Because you're black? Haha. Whoa, that second one really puts an even worse twist on the first one. A one-night stand once told me I smelled like his mum. At least it was smell and not taste. This is not my story, but my mother's. My mom was a pioneer in online dating. She was really interested in finding someone special. She agreed to meet a guy for dinner. First mistake, and went in to be seated prior to him arriving. He came in. The waitress brought menus and he set down his menu and the first words he spoke were asking my mom if she has ever known anyone who had a penis enlargement. He then went on to explain that he had flown cross county for this operation and it had gone wrong. He went into great specifics about just how wrong. My mother excused herself to the ladies' room and left out the back door. We still laugh out loud when she reminds us of her search for Mr. Right. Okay, but I now need to know what went wrong and how wrong it went. He's just talking on the phone and inserts, "It's not like I want to rape you or anything." He tried to contact me for a face-to-face date. I don't respond. He shows up to my office on a campus, starts raging and gets security called on him and escorted off. Within knowing each other about an hour he told me he had never wanted kids before. But the moment we met he felt it biologically. Then he told me he wanted to be my son's stepfather as well. I felt something reading that. After getting us lost on the way back to my friend's house, late at night, in a state I was only visiting. "What, do you think I'm going to take you out into the woods and rape you? LOL. He had a loaded gun rack in his truck, and a knife on his belt. I was 15. It was not funny. Better lock it down now. Ha, while you're ripe for the taking." Referring to my low self-esteem that he picked up on. I really hope you ran away. Anyone can do better than that. 3. You look just like my sister. And later in the date he admitted that's something he liked about me. Needless to say, no second date with Jamie Lannister. I was Joan of Arc in my former life. I wanna tear you apart. And your friend. 2. Kind of a toss-up. Imho. So this dude and I kept randomly being on the same bus. We would never talk, but make eyes. A few months into this, we get off at the main bus hub and he approaches me and invites me to dinner. There was a teriyaki place right across the street, so we went and had good conversation. I had a good time. When it came to separating ways, it wasn't what he said per se, but the fact that he brought up his hand and cupped my cheek. He just sorta left it there in silence, and then slowly grazed his fingers down along my face as he pulled away. He was trying way too hard to make it like a movie scene. This chick interviewed me while she kept ordering more beers for me, then at the end she asked if I wanted to be her winter boyfriend and spend time with her and her parents at a cabin in Vermont, but I had to commit to the whole season. Then she said, oh, but we will have our own separate cabin and we will have sex. I hadn't even kissed her yet and she just casually dropped that we'd be duck buddies for a few months. Like most red-blooded men would, I took her up on it. Her parents were really cool. She was super hot, and I got free stay in an awesome cabin and snowboarding for the whole season. She definitely had some form of social disorder. She couldn't make any connections with people. She didn't have a single friend. He asked me if I'd rather go on a cruise or to a resort for our honeymoon. Then sent me a text later to tell me he showed one of his clients my picture and the client told him his girlfriend was pretty. Actually, it was me that said it. Took a girl to see an Elton John concert. I was a little intoxicated. We were kissing. I was young and aroused. I whispered into her ear, I would kill to make love to you. Embarrasses me to this day. My now fiance is inordinately proud that he said I want to make love to you while we were making out. He was 38 and I was 35. Bless his cotton socks. And yours too. This was in the early zeros when I agreed to go on a date with a persistent co-worker at Target. He showed up to my house with a giant bouquet of flowers. My parents invited him in to check him out and spoke with him for a bit. His story didn't really check out. As a volunteer firefighter I flew to help on 9/11 from Syracuse. No flights obviously happened. But then all of a sudden they pulled out a disposable camera. When my mom asked him what it was for, he said CHS 135 is going on vacation for a week and I want a picture to remember her by and like from a dark comedy. We then heard the click of the shutter. I faked being suddenly sick and my mom told him I wasn't feeling well. Luckily it was only a summer job. Wait, what? Could you elaborate? Was he planning to take you on a vacation? Did he know you were leaving after because he stalks you? Why did he take a picture? My imagination runs way too wild. I make up way too many scenarios. He insisted he drive me to the movie theater, which meant he would have to drive to my town 45 minutes away, back to his town to go to the theater, then back to my town to drop me off. I said I didn't understand why I wouldn't just drive to the theater myself to save the multiple trips. When I adamantly refused a ride, he still drove to my town, bought me a coffee and still insisted I go in his car. I still said no, citing the fact that it would be dangerous for me to get into a vehicle with a person I didn't know, and I drove myself to the theater where I had a friend meet me for the movie. The guy still came with us to the movie and even paid for me despite me telling him I didn't think it was a good idea. Never spoke to him again and blocked his number. Drove me out to the desert for a planned stargazing bonfire thing. I know it's a dangerous first date meeting. I was stupid and young. Once we found a good spot he turned the car off and told me now this is where I kill you. He said it with a smile and started laughing. I'm just glad he was just joking, but doesn't make it less creepy. He described at length how men are all naturally as violent as those in the movie A Clockwork Orange and how they actively suppress it to fit in with society. This guy also invited me to a pub and proceeded to drink water while buying me G&Ts. Needless to say I yeeted out of there real quick. I went on a date with my cousin's co-worker who I met really quickly once and thought was cute. When we sat down at dinner he started talking about his job and he told me he holds his pee all day because he felt weird taking bathroom breaks around the guys at work. This is by far the cutest one. All the other posts in this thread sound like poor women who nearly escaped having their skin get worn, and then there's Mr. Nervous Tinkles. He told me that I would look good pregnant. Big yikes. Was new in town. Swiping on Tinder because I was bored. Do your friends know you're on a date? No, I could kill you and no one would know how. There was no second date. If anyone is out there struggling to find dates just needs to read this thread and realize if these people can get first dates, you can do anything. We met online and had been chatting for a while before meeting face to face. Soon into the date, he began to talk about how we would be telling the story of this date to our grandchildren. Honestly, if I was vibing with him it might have been a romantic story, but instead it just kind of freaked me out. I was forced into having my first kiss with a co-worker of mine by my endearing friend. Co-worker is in his 20s and I'm 16. I just went with it. Decided to hang out with him and we went to the mall. I got us coffees at Starbucks so we could sit and get to know each other. He proceeds to tell me all of his sexual history and how he has genital warts, but quote unquote don't worry. If you want to have sex with me, I just need my laser session and then I am good to go. I'm not judgmental about his situation, but I was only 16 and just had my first kiss. I did not want to stress about genital warts. They didn't say anything. It's what they did that creeped me out. They kept taking pictures of me when I wasn't looking. The only reason I knew this was because the first picture they took, they didn't shut the shutter sound off. Told me I was getting old and needed to get married and have kids soon so my grandparents can meet them. I was 25 and he was 24. The entire conversation was him waving a lot of red flags about wanting a baby mama and partner who hadn't gotten around, and there was no second date. Gross. So full disclosure, I used to be a fan of Hitler. Happened to a friend of mine about 5 minutes into meeting them for the date. He told me several times how beautiful his mom and teenage sister were and that he hoped our kids got his genes. They used to be a Wiccan and kept their clipped toenails, fingernails in a bag under their bed. Bragging about going to Cuba and Thailand to meet cheap sex workers. A guy I went out with took me up on his roof where there was a bunch of roadkill laying around. He told me he was learning to do taxidermy. Whoa, you made it to the end? You're a ducking beast. I'll cut you a deal. Smash like and subscribe for more curated content, bruh. It's free and that's a great price.